If you're one of the, millions of people who just dread the change of seasons, or maybe you dread every season because you're constantly battling sinus trouble, then this deep dive is definitely for you. And we're not talking about a quick cold here, the kind where you feel awful for a few days and then you bounce back. We are talking about that really frustrating, just soul-sucking chronic issue, that repeated congestion, the awful facial pressure, that feeling of a totally blocked nose, and those headaches that just will not quit. They just keep cycling back. It's the cycle of misery, really, that drives people to try everything, right? Sprays, decongestants, you name it. And often with, well, pretty limited long-term success. Our sources today, and we pulled these from traditional texts and clinical reviews, offer a deep dive into one specific approach. Homeopathy. This might be totally unfamiliar, and what we found is just a remarkably precise symptom profile linked to one core remedy. Our mission today is to unpack not just what that remedy is, but why this traditional approach looks at the condition with such, well, microscopic specificity. Okay, let's unpack this.
And that specificity is, it's everything to understanding the source material here. We're focusing on a really defined profile.
Right.
We're looking at traditional texts that emphasize gentle, lasting support for these chronic symptoms. And the real key here, which really narrows it down for you, is this strong environmental connection. It's cited over and over in the sources. We're talking about symptoms that specifically and dramatically worsen in damp weather.
Ah, damp weather. That's a huge clue.
It's a massive clue. It tells you instantly that we're operating in a knowledge system that connects your internal vulnerability directly to external factors. It views that dampness as a trigger that, makes an existing weakness worse, not just as a simple irritant.
That distinction, chronic versus acute, that is so critical, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because, conventionally, we often treat chronic sinusitis as just repeated inflammation or maybe some low-grade infection. But the person who's actually dealing with this knows it's so much more than a head cold. It's this exhausting, ongoing loop. The sources describe that classic misery so well. The intense pressure, the constant blockage, and just the unpleasantness of all that thick mucus. It feels like your body is just perpetually struggling.
Precisely. And we look at how these traditional sources frame chronic illness, the focus shifts completely. It moves away from just suppressing that symptom cycle. What's fascinating here is that the goal isn't just relief, it's what they call lasting support. It's about trying to restore a natural balance in the system. So it's an intervention designed to address why you get sick every time the weather changes, not just stopping the current congestion.
Okay, but for many people listening, the whole idea of homeopathy itself is a bit of a mystery. So before we get to the specific remedy, can we set the stage a bit? When these sources talk about restoring balance, they're relying on a principle called the law of similars, right?
That's the one. Using a highly diluted substance that in a large dose would actually cause similar symptoms to stimulate the body's response.
So how does that philosophy even inform the choice of a remedy for something as complex as chronic sinusitis?
That is an excellent question, because it explains the extreme detail we're about to get into. Homeopathic philosophy is, at its core, about individualization. They don't treat sinusitis as a category. They treat you and your unique sinusitis.
Okay, so your specific pattern of symptoms.
Exactly. It means mapping your entire symptom profile, the timing, the pain location, the quality of the discharge, those environmental triggers like damp weather, and matching all of that to a substance profile in their texts, the materia medica.
It sounds like fingerprint matching.
That's a perfect analogy. The premise is that the more precisely the remedy picture matches your specific presentation, the more effective it'll be in helping your body shift out of that chronic, stuck pattern.
That makes sense. The system demands really rigorous observation. So let's jump to the nugget we have for you today. If someone fits this description, chronic sinusitis, misery in damp weather, just no resolution, what is the core discovery we found in these sources?
The one that kept coming up.
Yeah, the specific remedy introduced in the text for this distinct pattern is Bichromicum.
This is the remedy. It's highlighted in the sources as just a powerful option for people fitting that exact description. And it has a very long documented history in this context. Bichromicum, which is potassium bichromate, is, widely considered one of the most effective tools for this very specific presentation.
But only if the symptoms align perfectly.
Only if they align perfectly.
So we have the name, but what exactly makes this remedy stand out? Why isn't a person with damp weather sinusitis just given some general anti-inflammatory? What is the microscopic detail here?
Well, it's not just the dampness. It's the physical, qualitative characteristics of the discharge and the pain. The sources are almost clinical in their specificity, creating these three highly descriptive indicators. They're like the signature.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, the mucus consistency. Bichromicum is indicated for mucus that is described as uniquely stringy and sticky.
Stringy and sticky.
Yes. It hangs down from the nose or throat in these long threads. It takes real effort to clear. That is a crucial, memorable detail. It's not just thick, it has this distinct, tenacious quality.
That focus on texture is striking. I mean, most people just say, I'm congested or I have thick mucus, but you're saying the quality of it, the stringiness, is the deciding factor.
Exactly. That stickiness is the first pillar. The second is the pain location. It targets frontal sinus pain.
Okay, so right in the forehead.
Right at the root of the nose, often
Yeah.
radiating out into the forehead or above the eyebrows. It's very specific. This differentiates it from pain in the cheeks or deeper in the head.
And the third indicator.
The third is timing. It specifically targets morning congestion and pain. It often gets worse between, say, 2 a.m. and 5:00 a.m., making sleep really difficult. Waking up is just miserable.
Wow, so you put those three things together. Sticky, stringy mucus, pain right in the forehead, and that major morning blockage, all made worse by dampness.
That specific constellation is the map for this remedy.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because the source material doesn't just list physical symptoms, it actually describes the feeling of the symptom.
Yes, the qualitative experience.
It works especially well, according to the source, when the symptoms feel heavy, clogged, and difficult to expel. You can just immediately picture that experience, that feeling of a deep, solid blockage that is just resistant to being blown out. That sense of physical inertia, that's the feeling we're honing in on.
And that qualitative description is critical. I mean, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows how the entire system of observation is built. It's all about finding the unique expression of the illness in an individual. We aren't just treating a generic infection. We are recognizing that the person whose condition is triggered by dampness and manifests as this tenacious, stringy discharge and causes deep frontal pain. Well, that person is suffering from a highly individualized imbalance.
So it's about breaking that specific cycle.
It's an attempt to break that chronic cycle that often leaves people dependent on daily symptomatic relief. The remedy seeks to restore the balance that allows the body to react normally, rather than producing these very distinct and tenacious symptoms every time it rains.
I understand the observation part, but, for a listener coming from a more conventional mindset, they might be skeptical. How does the source reconcile this highly specific approach with the idea of lasting support when the condition is chronic? Doesn't chronicity imply an ongoing issue that needs continuous management?
That's a fair point, and it really gets to the fundamental philosophical difference between the systems. In the context of these sources, lasting support doesn't necessarily promise an instant cure. Instead, it suggests increasing the body's resilience so that the chronic pattern becomes less frequent, less severe, and you become less susceptible to those environmental triggers. The goal is to move the person out of that frustrating Bichromicum symptom picture.
So it's like adjusting the sensitivity dial.
That's a great way to put it. If damp weather always pushes you into misery, the remedy seeks to make your system less reactive to that dampness. It supports a long-term shift away from that chronic state. The chronic nature means the tendency is deep-seated, but the specialized observation allows for a really targeted intervention to slowly shift that baseline resilience.
So it's all about precision mapping, really. We started with the general frustrating misery of chronic sinusitis, something millions of people suffer from, but we've ended up with this highly specific three-point map for exploration. If your sinuses worsen in damp weather and the mucus is stringy and sticky and the pain is frontal and heavy, then you have a very clear path outlined in these traditional texts.
A very clear path.
So what does this all mean? We've taken this deep dive into a traditional knowledge system for chronic sinusitis. We've learned that the approach focuses intensely on the individual profile, seeking gentle, lasting support, especially for those sensitive to damp weather. And we discovered that this intense specificity leads practitioners toward Bichromicum when the signature is that stringy, sticky mucus, severe frontal pain, and morning aggravation.
And this leads us to the most crucial context mentioned in all the source material. This is absolutely necessary. Homeopathic care is deeply tailored and specific. The remedy is selected based on a totality of symptoms, far beyond just congestion. So, and this is the key takeaway, always consult a qualified homeopath for proper guidance.
Right. It's not about self-diagnosis.
Not at all. This ensures that the highly specific symptoms you're experiencing are correctly matched and the right course of action is taken. It guarantees the safest and most accurate application of this precise knowledge.
Absolutely. The specificity is what we're highlighting here, the power of detailed observation. But let's end with a provocative thought, something that builds on this idea of highly specific observation. If this traditional system focuses so intently on restoring natural balance, and it tailors treatment to such precise qualitative descriptions like stringiness, heaviness, and damp weather sensitivity, what other common chronic issues might benefit from a knowledge system that values such precise, almost microscopic observation? Instead of just treating symptoms based on these broad categories, something to mull over as you pursue lasting relief and perhaps look at your own bodily experience with a renewed observational curiosity.